Let's do it. Well, welcome back again. I'm here with Albert Oktovianus in Indonesia. You're nice and warm weather there. I'm wearing turtlenecks here in Tasmania. Brief intros before we get into this and set it up. I'm Ali Uren of Kiikstart, working on with ambitious leaders and teams to stop organisational brain drain and capture that talent and repurpose it back into the business before it walks out the door. Albert, do you want to give us a nice little neat overview about where you are, your role, and what you're doing at the moment?
Yeah, thank you, Ali. Nice to be here also. And it's a little bit warm and humid here.
I don't do humidity.
Yeah, since I'm in Indonesia, in Jakarta, Indonesia, and currently I'm working around in the HR advisory space, and then with the focus in the change management transformations, and organization design. My current company is Strada, and we also do the HR technology implementations and advisory professional services. So yeah, I think that's the wrap up of
Very
my
good,
current.
very good. And we'll make sure at the end that people know where to find both of us as well too, because you've got had a big, bold career as well. Yeah. So just to set it up today, we're going to be focusing on a real case study around how generational, I suppose, difference and friction has been facilitated. I'm going to use an example, obviously confidential, I won't name the client, but a real example that I worked on. And we're going to go through and take people through some of the key elements and actions that had to happen in that business to move it from where it was to where it ended up. And it was quite a trip. So we're going to have a Q&A around that. And really, so when people, as we've talked a lot about generational fluidity, we've got 5 different generations now in workplaces. We can't ignore it. We have to be able to, and I know you've spoken a lot about bridging the gap and actually leveraging difference rather than trying to either avoid it where it will only become compounded and lead to other risks as well too. So we've, we've done video before, we've written articles around it. If people want links, we'll provide those to you as well. But today we're going to talk through, when you have so many different generations, what can happen. And then when you put complexity within the organisation on top of that, and I'm going to give you a scenario around that, what do we need to start to do to I suppose, direct the ship, so to speak, because I always say you've got to sweat the small stuff in business because it will get bigger. Yeah. They say don't sweat the small stuff, maybe in life, but in business you need to sweat it because it will become big. Yeah.
It will become big. To compound it, right? Like a domino effect or like a snowball, right? So I think that's where you got it started.
Yeah. So this is going to be a great 100%. So this is going to be a great place for me to set up the scene, right? So I want to set the scenario, the client that I was working on. Yeah. So this client was a leader in sustainable visitor economy, so hospitality and tourism. They were quite unique in the fact that they did really work in a very isolated part, one of the most isolated areas in the world. They were in a very far-flung place in Australia. What we had was multiple generations working in a high-pressured, isolated environment with not a lot of structures. And so what we saw in time is that the workplace was becoming quite fractured. We had real risk around, particularly when it was high season, lots of pressure. We saw lifestyle behaviours that were not particularly healthy. We saw misuse of social media as well too, from different generations that don't know, you know what I mean, like different ways of using it. Yeah. We started to have business impact and reputational damage as well too, right? Yeah. So to set the scene, the business was in a precarious position. Yeah. And because there are seasons where they have major events and it's high, like, that's where they make the majority of money. That is where it's, a lot of pressure. They knew that based on where the business was, they couldn't go into that season with that situation as it was, right? So I just want to set the scene. There was a lot of complexities around that. And I think it would be fair to say, just to allude to your point, Albert, that this had been coming for some time, right? Like what we talk about here is not a 5-minute situation, It has been happening over time, and people either don't have the capability, they think it's going to resolve itself, there's other things that take priority, And what we see is literally the business, almost like a mutiny, the business really in a very precarious position, not just financially, but from a reputational perspective, from its team members not being in the right place to also deliver on what was required to.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
All right. So,
yeah. I'm glad that you mentioned something about that, how the behaviors that being compounded over the time, right? And then in the end, it's always impacted to how people see the business, right? And then how they're going to run the business eventually, regardless of the, again, how many generations inside the business. So yeah, I think that's something that, again, how it's going to impact the business strategy and how it's going to,
100%.
to have this kind of how you say, influence around your whole branding,
Yeah,
of the business.
very much so.
Yeah, that's very good.
Very much so. So yeah, no, very much so. So you've set this up well. And so you're going to see as we go through this case study, there was not really a part of the business that was not left untouched, because it's a connected ecosystem as well, right?
Yeah.
So the first thing we did was, once I was brought on to work and partner with the organisation, we had to do a couple of things. We did a lot of things. But the first thing that we did, I worked with the owners and the senior leaders around really getting clear on the business strategy. So really resetting on what that was. So we didn't jump into training. We didn't jump into trying to fix people. We didn't jump, we didn't go there. We actually got very, very laser focused on what the organisation wanted to be. What was it going to be? What did it want to become? And that was critical, because we had to understand who we had, what resources we had, the context and the nuance in which we were working within, the opportunities we had, but also the gaps and the threats and the risk, right? Like, you can't do this work. You can't bridge generational difference and facilitate that to something great if you're not willing to be able to have those conversations. Yeah. So we sat down, and over many, it would have been probably a couple of months from memory. And basically I worked with mentoring and facilitating and bringing that in-house so that they could really crystallize what it was going to become. And so that business strategy piece was critical. Yeah. So we looked at, just I'll go through a couple of areas, and I've got notes here because I don't want to forget anything for the people that are watching as well. But, there's a lot we cover, Albert. I can't remember it all, my friend, even though I've thought about it a lot. But the areas that were in that strategy were, what does the business want to be known for? What category does it want to own? Yeah. And it wanted to own them because it had the facilities and the resources and the infrastructure to be, really own that sustainable tourism visitor economy space. So what space would it own, the key goals that it would achieve, the key players and the new roles that would have to come into that. And this next point's really important. Who would need to be part of it? What roles would we keep? What roles would we redesign? How would those roles interact with one another? So not just, these are the roles, but how would the players connect? The strategies and tactics obviously to make that possible, and the resources and support required. Yeah. Now that's just a high-level overview of some of the key areas. But they knew that that business would really need to be made from the ground up. It would really need to, we had to go from point A to point Z, Albert. Right? We're not even talking point A to point B, my friend. I'll stop talking for a minute. Let you talk about that.
Yes. You know what? When you first share a bit tidbits about this case, right?
Yeah.
And after you explain it more, I didn't realize that the complexity, of the moving parts. Because when you say hospital industry, I think most people, even me, I've been in touch with some of the industries in hospitals also. But what you're talking is, again, it's more into the transformation part, but also it's capture what I call in the industrial engineer is like the whole re-engineering part, like you almost start from scratch.
Yep.
And then business strategy is one thing, but the way that you made people working in it realize the the humongous the complexity and the humongous
Yes.
impact of all of this is not managed properly,
Mhm.
So I think maybe you can share a bit like how you're going to make the people realize about this, what's really
Yep.
happening behind it.
Yeah.
Sometimes like I have a feeling that there's a disconnection so when you go inside the first time between top management, and
Yeah.
the middle layer and then even until the lowest one,
Correct.
then
Correct.
how they, you know, it's not about
Mm.
generations gap,
Mm.
right? It's not about only about that, but I think it's also about, like you said, the strategy itself is not cascading down a bit
Correct.
more.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
something that how you're going to set up that kind of thing.
Yeah, 100%. So we had to move from not just, we had the current state and not just future
Mm.
state, but the actual essential state, right? That
Yes.
this had to move to. So even changing the language was quite different. So
Mm.
not saying the future state, but the desired and essential state, because there wasn't an alternative here. This had to really work.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what we had to do was also change the relationship between managers and the owners and the senior leaders, because there was a
Um,
blockage there, right? So those owners
yeah.
and directors were
Yeah.
playing roles that
Yeah.
really the manager should have been doing, right? The manager really, needed to be stepping up.
Mm.
And so
Okay.
that was critical. So while I worked with, coach, facilitated, mentored, worked with the directors and the owners,
Mm.
I then started with management. So
Mm.
that's when we started to. So you can see there's moving parts at one time,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Again, didn't go straight to the team, had to
Mm.
work with building the capability within the managers that would be really shaping the day-to-day workplace reality, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So they had to learn how to think like entrepreneurs. That was one of the key reasons why Kiikstart was brought onto that, because they knew they had to start to think differently to how
Mm.
they were going to face problems and challenges.
That's that's a very interesting, thinking like entrepreneurs.
At
I know.
100%.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
100%. That's been a key part of the business, Albert, since
yeah.
2008. Thinking like
Yeah.
entrepreneurs, think how many problems can be solved internally when people have that ability and the
Yeah.
environment to do that.
But there's always like two sides of that, right? I mean, I'm still in the neutral side of that, thinking like an entrepreneur, as Saint Boys, right? Because again, in this part of the world, some of the owners of the business are actually saying to me that, hey Albert, I don't really like thinking as an entrepreneur for my employees because at one point they did a good job and they leave the company because they want to build their own business. You know what I'm saying? Or like they doing like a side hustle as entrepreneurs and they're not like focusing on the current on their main job on their business as usual job. So maybe
I
you
think
can
it's
expand a
more
bit,
it's
right?
more the
Yeah,
theory and the concepts around it. Do you know what I mean? Like a
yeah,
lot of
yeah,
people
yeah, yeah,
aren't
yeah.
going to take off and do their own venture, right? I mean, some will, but it's more around the attitudes and the mindset and the skill set
Exactly,
that can be
exactly.
applied, right? I'm not saying, hey, get all this and bugger off, right? If you do that,
I
then
know,
fair enough.
yeah.
But
It's
um,
the mindset and the spirit, right? As
yes,
entrepreneurs, right? That you
correct.
own
The
also the
ability to think
company.
differently around gaps and threats and risk and opportunity, and every organisation
Yeah,
needs
yeah,
that
yeah,
now, Albert. Too. We can't keep bringing in experts all the time. We need to be able to own that and reshape it, and that's
yeah,
what happened
yeah,
here. So yeah, yeah.
yeah.
No, it's an interesting point. It's an
That's
interesting point. But so I started to work with them
yes,
to build the capability, the talent, the environments that they would we needed them on board and we
yeah,
needed them to drive this, right? Because I
yeah,
couldn't
yeah,
be up there. We had to, a lot of this was delivered remotely too because of the
yeah, yeah,
distance and cost, right?
yeah.
So they did a lot of scaffolded learning there where I would, we would unpack the learning, they would trial and play with it out in the field, come back, we'd review, design, layer it on once I'd mastered that. So we had to start with not just making sure that those that were remaining in the organisation had what they needed to take this transformation, but we had to design a different experience because we had to change dynamics too. So that meant, right, we had to look at how we had to reset and say, when we add to this team, we can't do what we've done before.
Yeah.
Right. So we have to look at how these generations are going to come together. And so it started with recruitment, right? So if you're going to be, so we have
always
to.
started there,
It always starts there, right? Because some people are going to
Because-
move on and they needed to move on, right? But, we're going to build this team. Sometimes generational, facilitating that means also acquiring new members in the team too, right? Let's get real. Yeah. So we had to look at everything. So I'm going to take you high level through that, Albert. And I know you probably have quite a lot to say on this, and this is good. So we had to change the whole recruitment approach and strategy. So that meant we had to change the narrative in the brand, which you sort of talked about. This is a marketing driver as much as a business driver.
Yes.
We had to look at the identity that was being put into the market.
Yes.
So what they did is that, they were in a far flung area. They flew to the largest capital or the closest capital city, and they met people and they had genuine dialogue, which really told a story about the reality of working in this environment, right? So there was a lot of friction in the team too, not just because of generations, but behaviours and how people deal with stress and pressure and isolation, right? It does funny things to people. And lifestyle and alcohol and whatever else, right? So it really makes people, if they're not prepared for the reality of it, it makes people make bad decisions too, right? So, this is something we need to think about. Stress and pressure comes in many different ways. You don't need to be in the middle of the outback, right, to feel this.
Yeah. So, okay. First of all, I love when you mentioned about, changing the dynamics.
100%.
It's something that again, because related to generational fluidity, right? That's one thing, right? And also I love a start with recruitment because again, it's a natural in the employee life cycle, right? From hire to retirement. But this one thing that I think is also critical that you mentioned there. Okay, as a context, because like you said, this is something first off the industry, right? The hospitality industry. I know it might be like a booming industry before the pandemic, everything else, right? That's one thing, right? And then now it has also maybe it's becoming booming again, but there's a challenge. Like you said, the place is not like really in the main place of business district or something, but it's like out there, everything else, right?
No.
And then some of the younger workforce or the current workforce is like aiming more into like, oh, I want to work remote, I want to work from anywhere or something like that, right? But this is like this industry, it's something that people have to be there, right?
Yes, correct.
Right.
That's right. You can't deliver it remotely.
Yeah. So, but when you say that, you are creating, I mean, recreating this brand, this employer branding, right?
Yes.
For
Yes,
the
it
whole
is.
thing and the story behind it. I mean, can you give some to our network here, like what are the main tips, that
Yeah, I will.
you can share
Yeah,
about it?
absolutely. So before they went out to recruit, they did a lot
Yeah.
of work on the brand. So across all of social media. So I'll give you some tips. Around that. So let's go. We'll go there and we'll come back to this. But so they actually did a whole wellbeing policy that was put out through all different social media channels. It was put through every job description. It became part of every one-on-one discussion as part of recruitment, be it one-on-one or in more of the group recruitment that they were doing at the time. And basically what they did as part of this wellbeing policy is they actually created these really creative new roles within the business to actually respond. So they had like a wellbeing coach. They had someone else who was looking after, because obviously the hospitality, so people live on site, of course. They had someone who had ability around diet and food and nutrition and exercise. It was, so they brought these really innovative roles into the business, right? Because they knew that it was a risk not to have that, right? Because of all the evidence and what had gone before. So within this, so they understood, okay, this is what people are going to need to show up as their best human. So in the wellbeing policy, they know exactly the type of environment, all the level of support and resources that are going to be put in there. And they told them through really beautiful imagery and narrative out through social media and out through ads, you know, particularly job ads and discussions at interview stage. But something in that policy was done very differently. And this is a huge point, I think, of difference, and something that I would allow, you know, our people to really think about, is that they were very clear on the type of person that needs to apply and that will be suited to that environment. So they didn't lie. I said, this is exactly what you're going to get. This is where we're going. This is how we're going to support you, right? Come on board, but this is what we need from you. Yeah. This is the reality of being in all its glory, and the good, bad, and ugly. This is the reality of being in the role. This is what we need. If that is not you, then please don't apply. So they were very clear about that, which meant a couple of things, and I'll talk about some of the key outcomes at the end of this. But they started to attract the right person. Rather than be a free-for-all, right? Rather than be, oh, it's for everyone. It's not for everyone. It's not. And so they started to get laser focused on their ideal candidate, the type of, not just what that person was going to do in terms of delivery, but the style and manner of the delivery. So they basically looked at their brand, as you said, the image and the story that they were taking to candidates. Yes. The job descriptions were written in a way that was in line with the strategic plan. So they weren't disconnected. So they could keep that vision top of mind in the JD, and they were very clear about the type of candidate, not just in terms of skill and competency, but in terms of character and traits. And then, as I said, then the social media, it was very consistent in telling that narrative as well too. So they are some of the key things around how they started to go from a very desperate brand to take everyone without a lot of thought to, no, this is who we are. This is, you know, how we work together, the respect piece, the cultural personality. And then we're able to show that through those different touch points. And of course, people knew before they rocked up at that one-on-one or that interview exactly what the story was, because they'd been sent videos. So they had a beautiful video done about the environment, so people could see that if they were to work, this is where you're working. So I mean, these are things that any organisation can benefit from, regardless of industry or location. And then also too, what they did is they had managers make videos as well too.
Is it TikTok videos or
no, they're not TikTok, but they were sent out. They're not TikTok, no, but they were sent out, you know, and used on social media and used directly to candidates too, right? So there's a few things there, Albert, that are tips that people can start to really think about when they're saying, you know, if we're going to set the scene around how we want people to show up and the dynamics around engagement, right? Because a lot of the time we do see disrespect when it comes to different generations because we haven't set down clear standards, clear boundary. But we are setting those down through those key points and tips that I've just given you.
I think, okay, so this is very good, you know, because when you mentioned that they are getting serious in hiring these new roles, you know, that shouldn't be there in the first place, right? Before it's happened, these things blow ups. I mean, and now they are serious. So they are actually creating a very supportive ecosystems or like around their employee value propositions, right? I mean, like this is something that we could actually offer you because now we have the tangible support system with all the new rules that when if you come to work with us, we will take care of you, right? I mean, this is something. So I think again, this is regardless of the generations.
100%.
I mean, not only the current ones, even me, well, I'm not that old, hopefully.
No.
Even me, right? I want to work in a place if I have to be there most of my waking hours. I want to be a place where they have nutritionists, you know, and then I have someone taking care of my psychological and then psychological, you know, and physical health, everything else, right? And it's something that you expect regardless of your generations, right? Again, generational fluidity is not only about the gaps, but finding the what you as a human, need as employees. Oh, that's very good. So yeah, I mean that's one thing, right? Recruitment, but I'm sure you also have what that's attracting the right people there. Again, not
Yes,
only the culture fit people, but people who actually have the values, and then the I say the capabilities in working there.
that's right. That's
Yeah,
right.
but of course I have to ask this, like, and then there's the maintenance and the retention part, right?
Mm,
For
mm.
these right people, right?
Yeah.
For
So
sure,
let
that's
me,
something
yeah,
that you can share
absolutely.
about.
So I'm going to give
Yeah,
you what, and I'm going to talk about some of those
yeah,
before we
yeah,
get
yeah,
to
yeah,
what some of the outcomes were longer
yeah, yeah,
term.
yeah,
Yep. And
yeah, yeah.
I'm going to address that as well, because that was a
Nice,
key
nice,
outcome and
nice,
impact
nice.
from doing this work.
Yeah.
Once they were, so what we did, just to let people know about the continuum here, if we can, I'm
Mm-hmm.
mindful of time. But what we had to do was look at the onboarding and the ongoing
Mm.
development of people too, right?
Okay.
So
Yeah,
we'd obviously
yeah,
started telling the narrative. We completely redesigned the recruitment
yeah,
experience. We then had to look at the onboarding piece and
yeah.
how that was going to be designed to make sure that when people arrive, that
Mm.
they feel supported and that they're able to start being part of that really quite early on, and not
Yeah,
and have that be immersed into that business and feel part of that, and not have that regret that we can sometimes feel,
yeah,
within the first
yeah,
2 days or
yeah.
couple of weeks, that buyer regret.
The
So we
honeymoon's
read,
over.
yeah, absolutely. And look, when you're rock up in the middle of nowhere and you're in harsh conditions, it's like, wow. So we redesigned that to make sure that people felt connected back in and had meaning
Yeah,
in that,
yeah,
and felt
yeah.
at ease. And then we had ongoing L&D. So we redesigned all of that and created new personalised plans and flows for that.
Mm.
But we also made sure that the managers, again, could create those relationships and ongoing dialogue with their teams. So we changed the way that people fed feedback and advice and gave that to one another, how they
Mm.
checked in with one another, how
Mm-hmm.
they used wisdom, intel with one another
Yeah,
when things didn't go right, how they debriefed on that rather than ignore it and drink alcohol, and that
yeah.
leads nowhere well. So people made, what we saw around this is, as they started to become more confident and competent in
Yeah,
dealing with stresses and adversity,
yeah.
it started to have positive effects on personal well-being as well too. So
Um,
the managers became facilitators
yeah,
of the
yeah, yeah,
business, which
yeah.
then allowed the managing directors and the owners that have been very much stuck in trying to make this work to be able to step out and
Mhm.
actually work on the plan and the vision
Mhm,
for that
mhm,
business and the
mhm.
financial aspects of that as well. Now,
Yeah,
remember, this
yeah.
was lucky; it was all done, in a very time that was quite allowed them to prepare as well too. But we, as you said, really worked on the managers stepping up and being true leaders, where
Mm.
they could facilitate the development of their people,
Yeah.
where in the past, if something wasn't right and someone was in the wrong role, it was ignored, rather
Mm.
than, because people struggle with that too, right? Like, they have to
Yeah, yeah,
change how they're seeing conflict rather than do an
yeah.
opportunity for development and resolution, right? So we had to work on that. There was a lot of work done with
Yeah.
management to be able to get them to really step up and drive this forward.
Yeah.
And they did that, so they made far more informed strategic decisions around recruitment.
Mm.
They
Yeah.
could start to
Yeah.
utilize people in different roles because they thought more in a business way rather than,
Yeah.
oh, I'm just a manager, sort of stuck here, trying to make the
Well,
best of
they
a
had to,
pretty
right? They
trying
had to.
situation.
They had to that.
Mm,
Not only operational, but they have to like start to touch on the strategic level as the manager.
100%. So they took those learnings that
Yeah.
they had got one-on-one from working with me.
Yeah.
We did some team stuff as well while I was up there, and we allowed the team to obviously certainly have that buy-in, but then they had continued buy-in through feeding, what was happening day to day back up into management,
Mm.
and have those plans for their own growth. So what
Yeah.
happened is, when people were identified as having potential and opportunity,
Mm.
then those discussions would be had with management and would
Mm.
then be facilitated too, right? And so that
Yeah.
might be an
Yeah. Yeah.
opportunity, very well connected business. So it might be an opportunity within the business. It might be an opportunity with a strategic partner. It
Mm.
might be a learning and development opportunity where there's some formal learning. It might be a stretch opportunity in industry that they could be exposed to. So that allowed those that really, were identified as those that could really bring that value, that could stay on and wanted to stay on too. And most of them, and that was a real, I think if we look at some of the impact in action, and I can go there before we sort of do our final roundup, the people that they had really few, if any, drop off, Albert, and they were all the right people too, right? It wasn't they just stayed because they couldn't go anywhere. So I just want to, if I can, I'm just going to run through some of the outcomes and impacts, if I can. And then we'll throw it open to final questions. So I want to go through some of these. So one of the key ones, of course, was the business was in a stronger position financially than it had been. So it was able to also run through, while COVID was extremely disruptive, they were able to come out through that, right? Because they were in a financial position to be able to do that and to be able to be able to respond and have the financial resources to be able to, manage their way through that. And that certainly wasn't the case. So that was obviously critical for the business. They attracted the right team members that wanted to stay. So they didn't have disruption, right? They didn't have these negative toxic behaviors. They didn't have people felt well, they felt healthy, they were making better decisions. They de-risked the risk of hiring the wrong person, because of the checks and balances, right? So this is the problem. You get the wrong person in, that's really hard to try and work with. You are really chasing your tail, right? They de-risked it so that the right person, increasing the likelihood of the right person getting in there, then obviously allowed the right people to stay. So they obviously had now ways and means of picking up whether or not it wasn't the right person, or people would self-select out as well. They had people, because of the work that had been done, the development, the conditions, the environments that we've created, they changed the dynamic. So they had different ways now to respond to adversity in that business. So it was, and the managers were now more, in terms of adversity intelligence, far more capable to be able to respond to that and leave those owners and managing directors out of it as well too, which really, a lot of the time they didn't need to be involved in it, but they were, because they were in the weeds. So they were no longer in the weeds. As I said, changes in lifestyle and decisions around that, and changes in mental health and physical health, as you would know, then feeds back into different business decisions. Different environment. When you're coming to work, you're physically and mentally in a healthier place.
That's important.
You show up different too. And as I said, the relationship, one of the biggest ones was also the rewiring of the relationship between management and the owners and the major, managing director. So that was huge, right? That just allowed, as I said, new space for both parties to step into those roles and to have a more positive relationship rather than always being firefighting mode. So it was, I worked across two businesses for them. Both had slightly different but very similar requirements. And as I said, I think for me to share this case study, and I want to throw over to you for final comments and questions, but it allows people to see, regardless of industry, regardless of location, there's so much work around that wraps around our people that we need to design right if we're going to be able to, really fully leverage and celebrate generational difference. As I said, there was social media policy, responsible usage across the whole business. This sort of, so things that had caused risk, we did work around them. We identified that early so that we were able to develop the resources, the comms, the processes, the tools against the gaps, the threats, the risk. But then, we again wedded and linked back up into that strategy as well too. So look, still one of my favorites because of, I suppose, the complexity and the challenge that was in it, right? Because it had so many elements. It wasn't just business, never is. It was human, it was social, it was economical, it was environmental. But that's, as I said, I want to throw it open to you, Albert, for questions and comments before we sort of wrap it up. But I wanted to, I'd like to think that will give our listeners some practical things that they're able to do to join the dots between all the parts of the ecosystem.
That's very critical, joining the dots. and to create this whole mitigation plan and then solutions to the business, right? That impacted the business. Oh, wow. Okay. It's a lot to digest. I mean, yeah, sure. I believe that you can create more out of this case, right? But for now, I just want first, I just want to do a comment about this when you mentioned that, yeah, they are start to attracting the right people, but also the wrong people, right? But again, this is like something like a good problem, you know?
Yeah.
Because at least now the company has choices, you know? Because previously they don't have like we
Well, it
need
was hard to
talent.
attract, it
Yeah,
was hard to
right.
get people, right? Like it
We
was,
need
the
talent.
industry is struggling. And then, like I said, yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. Put it out in the middle of nowhere, then it's even going to be more difficult, isn't it? Right?
Yeah. They say we need talents and we need people who want to work with us and to work for us. And then uh they don't have choices. Like they just accept whoever comes, like the warm bodies, you know, to put on
Yeah.
the crew and everything else, right? But now they have choices, but
Yes.
it comes with some impact, right?
Yes.
Yes, you have choices on the right people, but also the wrong people. So again, there's a good problems that
Yes.
people should have shouldn't overlook about it, right? I think that's very important. But my question is actually this, you know. So again, going back and into your framework of circular workplace, right?
Yes.
If you're applying this in these situations, right? Can you tell me and the network also, like in which phase that you are really going into, you know, digging up and then meeting up these people, the roles that you know that oh it's going to impact it, and how are you decided like which roles that you need to approach, you know,
Yeah.
to get more into the mindset and what's really
Yes.
happening, you know.
Yeah. So in terms of the
So
role design
yeah,
and whatever, that was done.
yeah,
That was done early. So that would have been done probably in the first part of when you look at the
mm,
circular workplace. So
yeah, yeah,
because that was done around the strategic piece, the innovation capability review, where
yeah,
we're
yeah,
looking at where the gaps, the threats, and the risks are across team and
yeah,
business and operation and brand against
mm,
the outcomes of the plan and what the
yeah,
project needs to deliver on. So at that time, once we'd
mm,
had the
yeah,
strategic work, the innovation capability review, that's when
yeah,
we started to talk about the roles that would need to either be let go, redesigned, or actually created
yeah,
was in that phase. And then we had to then, as part of the
mm,
recruitment, Albert, we then went to market. Now, there were some people that actually had the expertise within
mm,
the business. And so it was
mm,
really a matter of
yeah,
getting buy-in from them and then redesigning that role in consultation, of course.
yeah,
But some of them were different roles and needed to be recruited for. But that was
mm,
done very early on as part of the strategic planning piece.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
So, this
interesting. Yeah.
was, this was important. And then, like I said, with their marketing, that is partly my background, but they had their own agency that
Mm,
also was part of this too, right? So I think it's
mm,
important to note that you brought in OD, L&D, you had industry specialists, you had
yeah,
marketing and comms.
yeah,
And so it was all very connected. And I think I want to
yeah,
say, that like with anything in business,
mm,
you need the right people around. They had,
yeah,
obviously employment lawyers, they had
yeah,
expertise in that space as well. So very
mm,
connected. There
yeah,
weren't loose ends. There weren't,
yeah,
when they sort of, were about to go and recruit, went, oh, gee, what's the employer brand going to be? What are we
yeah,
taking to the market?
yeah,
What
yeah,
narrative are we telling that will make us different, in a
yeah.
struggling market? And so, yeah, the roles happened in stage one,
Nice. Okay.
really early. Once that piece was, that was done.
Yeah, just to show that the importance of that first step, you know, taking on the first step, right? And then because like you said, it will be snowballing, you know, in the other phases, everything else, and the last of the impact.
Mm.
Yeah, so well, hopefully that you are still sharing more around this
Yeah. Yep.
besides this this podcast, you know, and to share with other also people.
Absolutely.
That's
And
all I
like I
can
said,
say.
it was
Yeah.
it's a big project. And I said, you and I always
Yeah.
talk interesting things, right? Like
Yeah.
that's why we're here.
Yeah.
We'll continue to do that. And I think we'll do a debrief, and I'm happy for people to say, hey, look, I love that. Can you tell me a bit more? Let's do something else on that topic and that. Because I mean, like I said, we're never stuck for timely, valuable dialogue and real tactics that people can go away and say, yeah, okay, I need to start looking at that in my own business. And I think, I just, sort of final before we wrap up, and I want to thank everyone, and of course yourself for sharing intel here. Is, every bit affects the other. And as I said, we talk about the ecosystem, but every element will affect the other. So we couldn't go out and write that wellbeing policy and craft a narrative to say to people, hey, this is the emotional proposition. This is what we promise we will give you, what we need from you, but what you'll get from us in terms of that wraparound support and development and care, until those roles were designed, because they were a fundamental point of difference.
Yes.
The health coach, the dietitian, the nutrition, that lifestyle element was critical to attracting the right mix of generations as well too.
Yep.
So, look, I always enjoy being with you, Albert. I want to thank everyone who's given us their headspace that says, you know what, we've got 5 generations, we can't ignore it, but how can we really do something pretty awesome that will allow us to develop the people in the business at the same time, because it's not one or the other, it's both. And hopefully we've certainly given people some ideas around how they can start to do that.
Yes, different generations, but all still humans, right?
You know what? We're humans at the end of the day, right? And this is not, this is something that needs to be done with care and consideration and love. I think that's an important point. While there's a lot of talk about tech and AI and so forth,
yes.
We're humans. We're humans at the end of the day. There was no AI in this as such. This was just humans to humans doing things that are inspirational, that connects to people.
So true. I mean, I just want to shout out with one of your collaborators, to Neil, right? The
Neil
pieces that you've done with him is very, very impactful. I mean, like, it gets me thinking also.
Well, that's why we show up and do this too, right? We make each other think, and we make others think out there and differently. And so, I thank you. Thank you, everyone. And we'll be back. This won't be the last time.
Sure.
Go well, everyone. Bye.
Well, right.